The large rehearsal hall at the academy was unusually crowded that morning. Students from every floor had come down, hoping to witness the famous pianist give his masterclass. Some were excited, others nervous, but everyone whispered with the same kind of energy that fills a room before something important. Near the back of the hall stood a girl who tried her best to stay invisible. Her name was Lena. She held her white cane close and kept one hand on the cool railing along the wall. She had come early, long before anyone else, so she could slowly count her steps and memorize the space. The air smelled of old wood, polished floors, and the faint, warm scent of hundreds of fingers that had touched the piano keys over the years. Lena knew the smell better than most people. It was the smell of home, of comfort, of the world she understood. Even though she was blind since birth, music had always made sense to her. She didn't need to see the keys to understand them. She felt them. She listened to them. And she could hear a note the way others recognized colors. But in rooms like this, filled with people who did not know her, she always felt small. The students chatted loudly. They talked about the famous guest, about how he had performed in grand halls across the world, and how he was known not just for his talent, but for his sharp tongue. Some admired him. Others feared him. Lena wasn't sure what to expect, but she knew one thing: she didn't like crowds. Crowds came with whispers, and whispers always felt heavy. When the doors opened and the famous pianist finally walked in, the air seemed to tighten. His shoes clicked confidently against the wooden floor as he stepped toward the stage. He didn't greet the students. He didn't smile. He simply nodded to the director and then took his place beside the piano as if the room already belonged to him. Everyone rushed to find seats. Lena stayed near the wall, quietly listening. The pianist began speaking about discipline, about perfection, about how true talent was rare, and passion without skill meant nothing. His voice was strong and carried across the hall. Some students nodded, eager to agree with him. Others shrank in their chairs. After a long introduction, he clapped his hands sharply. "Who is first?" he asked. A few brave students went up one by one. Each played a piece they had prepared. Some were good. Some were nervous. All were treated to the pianist's cutting comments. He pointed out every mistake, like he was removing dust from a glass surface. Cold, precise, unforgiving. You rush the tempo. Your left hand is weak. You lack emotional depth. You are not ready for a real audience. Students tried to smile through the discomfort, but Lena could hear the disappointment in their breathing. When the fourth student finished playing, there was a short silence. The pianist's voice rose again. "Anyone else?" he asked in a tone that sounded almost bored. The director glanced around. His eyes landed on Lena. He knew her. He knew the gift she carried quietly inside her. He also knew she wouldn't step forward unless someone encouraged her. He gently called out, "Would you like to try?" Heads turned. Lena felt dozens of eyes suddenly on her. She stood still, her fingers tightening around her cane. The pianist looked in her direction, but didn't immediately understand why the room had gone quiet. "She's blind," a student whispered. Loud enough for him to hear. The pianist paused. Then, with a sharp exhale, he said, "Blind? And she wishes to play?" His voice wasn't curious. It wasn't kind. It was amusement mixed with disbelief. Lena lowered her head slightly. She didn't want attention. She had only hoped to learn from the class, not become its center. The director spoke again, trying to make things easier. "She is one of our most dedicated students. She may surprise you." The pianist chuckled under his breath. "Surprise me? My dear director, music is not magic. It requires precision. How will she follow instructions if she cannot see the keys?" The hall filled with uncomfortable murmurs. Some students shifted in their seats. A few tried to hide their reactions, but Lina could hear everything: the small laughs, the forced coughs, the awkward silence. She took a step back, her heart beating faster. She had been mocked before. She had heard comments like this from people who didn't understand her world. But hearing it in front of so many people made her chest feel tight. It's fine," she whispered. "I don't have to play." But the director was not ready to let it end there. "Please," he said softly. "You came here to learn. You deserve a chance like everyone else." The famous pianist raised an eyebrow. "Very well," he said. "If she insists." His tone made it clear he didn't expect anything meaningful. Lina stayed still. She didn't move toward the piano. She didn't lift her face. She only listened to the silence stretching around her dot. Her hands felt cold. She remembered all the time she practiced alone in the small music room upstairs. She remembered how the notes felt like worn threads connecting her to something bigger. But this room felt nothing like those quiet moments. This room felt heavy. The pianist sighed impatiently. "Well, if you cannot play, do not waste the class's time." More whispers. Someone clicked their tone. Someone else shuffled a paper. Lina's throat tightened. She shook her head slightly. She didn't want to cry, not here, not in front of strangers. The director stepped closer to her and placed a gentle hand near her shoulder, not touching her, but guiding her presence. "You do not need to prove anything to him," he said quietly. "But if you want to play, I am here with you." Lina breathed in slowly. She wanted to play. That was the truth. She wanted to show that music didn't belong only to those with perfect vision. But fear was a heavy barrier. She finally whispered, I just don't want them to laugh." "No one will laugh," the director promised. "Not while I'm here." But she knew someone already had. Her fingers gently traced the handle of her cane. She lifted her face slightly, not toward the pianist, not toward the students, but upward, as if listening to something above them all. She took one hesitant step forward. The hall went silent again. The famous pianist crossed his arms. "If you can play," he said, "then show us." His voice was sharp, almost taunting. Lina stood still. She could feel the piano a few feet ahead of her. She could hear its quiet presence, the way the strings hummed faintly inside the wooden body. She had always been able to sense pianos that way, like living creatures waiting to speak. But she didn't move any closer. Her heart beat loudly in her ears. She knew the path from here to the piano. She had memorized it earlier. 8 steps forward, 1 step left. But everything felt different with so many people watching. The pianist tapped his shoe impatiently. "I knew it," he said softly, but loud enough for others to hear. "This is why standards must be kept. We cannot pretend everyone is capable of." The director cut him off. "Enough." His tone was firm but calm. Lina's lips trembled. She could feel the disappointment building inside her. Not disappointment in the pianist, not even in the students, but in herself. She hated freezing like this. She hated letting fear win. She took another breath, trying to steady her pulse. But just when she gathered the courage to take another step, one of the students let out a quiet laugh. It wasn't loud. It wasn't meant to echo. But it did. Her courage slipped away. She shook her head weakly and stepped back toward the wall. "I'm sorry," she whispered. Her voice was so soft that only the students near her and the director heard it. But those 3 words carried the weight of everything she had ever struggled with, every doubt. Every moment she felt she didn't belong. The famous pianist let out a dismissive sigh. As if the matter was now settled. The director watched Lina retreat with a heavy heart. He knew she was capable of far more than the room had seen. He knew she had a gift that didn't need eyes to shine. And he also knew this wasn't the end. This was only the moment, before everything changed. The rehearsal hall slowly emptied after the masterclass ended, but the air still felt heavy with everything that had happened. Lena stayed close to the wall, waiting for the room to clear so she wouldn't bump into chairs or rushing students. She didn't want anyone to see her shaking hands or hear how uneven her breathing had become. All she wanted was to disappear quietly. She heard students gathering their bags, whispering in low voices as they walked out. Most of them talked about the masterclass, about the famous pianist's strict comments, and about the pieces they had played. But a few mentioned her. Why did the director ask her to play? Someone whispered, "He probably wanted to show that he supports everyone," another replied. Still, it was awkward. Lena felt each word like a small pebble hitting the surface of her heart. Not enough to break anything, but enough to make ripples. She waited until the last footsteps faded. Only then did she loosen her grip on her cane. The director walked toward her carefully, not wanting to startle her. "Lena?" he said gently. She tried to smile, but her voice came out thin. "I'm fine. I shouldn't have come." "No," he said firmly. "You absolutely should have. You belong here as much as any student in this building. And today wasn't your failure. It was the failure of those who couldn't see past their doubts." She didn't answer. She wasn't upset with him. She just didn't know what to say. The director waited, giving her space to breathe. After a moment, he added, "Before you go, there's something I'd like you to do, if you're willing." Her fingers tightened around her cane again. "What is it?" she asked. "Play one piece," he said softly. "Not for the class, not for the pianist, not for anyone who mocked you, just for yourself, and for me, if you'll allow it." She hesitated. Her chest still felt tight, but she trusted the director. He never pushed her to show off or compare herself to others. He only encouraged her to play because he believed music gave her strength. Slowly, she nodded. The director stepped aside, giving her space to move. Lena lifted her cane and counted her steps 8 forward, 1 to the left. Her shoes brushed lightly against the smooth wooden floor as she moved toward the piano. She placed her hand on the side of the instrument and felt its familiar warmth. This wasn't the same piano she usually practiced on, but pianos all carried a heartbeat of their own. She could sense this one clearly. Once she reached the bench, she felt around gently before sitting down. The director stood a respectful distance away, not wanting to distract her. She rested her fingers on the keys, but didn't press down yet. She inhaled deeply, letting the scent of polished wood calm her. She could almost hear the faint vibrations hiding inside the piano. Like a quiet greeting, the director spoke softly behind her. "Take your time. I'll turn off the lights to give you peace." He switched them off, though Lena's world remained the same. Darkness wasn't new to her. It was her constant companion. But she appreciated the gesture. It meant no one was staring. No one was judging. It was just her and the instrument. She let her fingers glide lightly across the keys, feeling the distance between them, the texture she knew by heart. Her pulse slowed. Her breath steadied. Finally, she pressed the first note. A soft, warm sound filled the quiet hall. That single note felt like opening a door. Another followed, then another, forming a gentle melody she created on the spot. She didn't need sheet music. She played what she felt: relief, hurt, hope, all mixed together. Her hands moved slowly at first, and faster as her confidence returned. The music shifted from soft to strong, as if telling the room that she was still here, still capable, still carrying a gift no mockery could take away. The director closed his eyes as he listened. He had heard her play many times, but something about this moment felt different. There was rawness in her sound, something honest and trembling. Like a storm trying to settle. As Lena played, She forgot about the students who had whispered. She forgot about the famous pianist's cutting remarks. She forgot the shame that had wrapped around her earlier. The piano gave her a place where none of that existed. When she finally finished, the last note hung in the air for a long time before fading gently into stillness. Lena lowered her hands from the keys. She didn't smile, but she felt a small warmth blooming inside her chest. The director stepped forward quietly. "Beautiful," he whispered. "Absolutely beautiful." She breathed out. "I made mistakes." "All musicians do," he replied. "But mistakes don't matter when you speak from the heart. And you always do." Lena turned her face toward the sound of his voice. "Do you really think I belong here?" "Of course you do," he said without hesitation. "And I think the world needs to hear you. Not someday, soon." His words startled her. "The world? I don't know if I could do that." "You don't have to decide now," he said kindly. "But don't let the wrong voices decide for you." Lena nodded slowly. She didn't fully believe she was ready for anything beyond her small practice room. But the director's confidence felt like a light shining through the fog. He helped guide her back from the piano. She folded her cane and held it close, not wanting to lose balance. The director walked her toward the hallway. Just before they reached the door, he paused. "Lena," he said gently, "I want you to return tomorrow. I'd like to talk to you about something important." "Something important?" she repeated. Her voice held a mix of curiosity and worry. "Yes, and I think you'll want to hear it." He didn't give any more details. He opened the door for her, and the sound of the hallway greeted them. Soft footsteps, the buzz of distant conversations, the faint echo of someone practicing on another floor. "I'll be here," she said quietly. The director smiled, though she couldn't see it. "Good, I'll expect you." She made her way through the hall, using the cane to guide her. Her steps were slow but steady. Each movement felt a little lighter than before. But just as she reached the building's entrance, she heard someone rushing down the stairs. "Wait!" A voice called. Lena stopped and turned slightly. She recognized the voice one of the students from earlier. A kind girl she had spoken to once or twice. The student approached gently. I wanted to say I'm sorry for earlier." Not everyone was laughing. "I wasn't." Lena didn't know what to say. Apologies always felt complicated. "It's okay," she answered finally. "No," the student insisted. "It's not. You didn't deserve that. And honestly, most of us were just nervous. We weren't trying to hurt you. We just didn't know what to do." Lena nodded. "Thank you for saying that." The student hesitated. "I heard you play after the class ended. It was beautiful. I stayed outside the door. I hope that's okay." Lena's cheeks warmed slightly. "You stayed?" "I did. And I think the director is right. You have something special." The student's voice shook slightly, as if she were nervous about saying too much. "Don't let people like him stop you." Lena offered a small, shy smile. "I'll try." "Good. And if you ever need help walking around the building or finding a room, you can ask me." Lena didn't want to depend on anyone, but she appreciated the offer. "Thank you. That means a lot." The student left with a friendly goodbye, and Lena stepped outside into the afternoon air. The cool breeze brushed against her face. She tilted her head upward, feeling the warmth of the sun on her skin. She took a long breath. Maybe today hadn't ended the way she expected. Maybe it had even begun terribly. But something inside her had shifted, something small but important. She had played through her fear. She had found her voice again, even if only in an empty hall. And tomorrow, the director had something to tell her. She didn't know what it was, but as she walked toward the quiet street, she felt a tiny spark of curiosity. Whatever came next, she would be ready to listen. The next morning, the academy felt different to Lena. Maybe it was the cool air, or the way sunlight warmed the hallway tiles beneath her shoes. Or maybe it was simply the memory of the director's voice from yesterday telling her he had something important to discuss. Whatever the reason, her steps felt a little braver today. She moved slowly through the entrance, tapping her cane lightly as she walked. She didn't need help finding her way here anymore. She had memorized the turns, the stairs, the change in the floor texture that told her she was close to the music rooms. Inside the building, she heard students warming up soft scales on violins, humming voices, fingers tapping on tabletops as they tried to remember rhythms. She always loved these morning sounds. It made the building feel alive. The director had asked her to meet him in his office. She knew where it was, but she still took her time, wanting to steady her nerves first. She didn't know if his important news would be wonderful or frightening. When she reached his office door, she heard papers rustling inside. She knocked lightly. "Come in," the director called Dot. She pushed the door open and stepped inside. The director stood from his desk, greeting her warmly. "Good morning, Lena," he said. "I'm glad you came early." She smiled softly. "You said you wanted to talk." "Yes," he replied, guiding her toward a chair so she wouldn't bump into anything. "Please sit." She carefully lowered herself into the chair, her cane resting beside her. The director sat across from her. His voice was gentle but steady. "I want to ask you something that might feel a bit overwhelming at first. So if you feel unsure or scared, that's okay." Lena swallowed quietly. "All right. You know your playing is special," he began. "Not because you're blind, but because you hear music in a way most people never will. Your sense of pitch, your emotional depth, your expression. It's rare." She lowered her head. Compliments always made her nervous. "I just play what I feel? And that," he said, "is exactly why I think you're ready for something bigger." She lifted her face slightly. "Bigger?" He continued. "Next month, there will be a charity showcase held at the city auditorium. It's a big event musicians from different places perform to raise funds for local schools. Every year, thousands attend. And this year, they offered the Academy one performance slot." Lena's heart began to beat faster. She didn't interrupt him, but her hands tightened in her lap. "I want you to take that slot," the director said. "I want you to perform for that audience." The room felt heavier, as if the walls had moved closer. She shook her head slightly. I don't think I can. That's too big. I've never played for anyone except you or a small class. And yesterday, I couldn't even walk to the piano." The director reached toward her voice, not touching her, but letting her know he was close. "Yesterday was one moment. One bad moment. But it doesn't define what you're capable of." "But what if I freeze again?" She whispered. "And you freeze," he said gently. "And we try again the next day. There is no shame in fear. But don't let fear decide the rest of your life." She stayed silent, not because she disagreed, but because the idea of performing in front of thousands felt like standing at the edge of a high cliff. The director continued, "You don't need to give me an answer right now, but I want you to think about it. And whatever you choose, I'll be here to help you." Lena nodded slowly. "I'll think about it." He smiled. "Good. That's all I ask." She stood from the chair, gripping her cane. Before she left the office, she said softly, "Thank you for believing in me." The director answered with a warmth that filled the room. "You make it very easy to believe." Lena left the office with a heart full of mixed feelings, fear, hope, confusion. Excitement all blending together in a way she couldn't untangle yet. Dot, as she walked through the hallway. Someone called her name. Dot. It was the same student who apologized yesterday. "Hey, you're here early," the student said with a friendly tone. Lena smiled. I had a meeting with the director. Oh? Everything okay? Yes, Lena replied. He asked me something important. I'm still thinking about it. The student didn't push for details. If you ever want to talk about it, I'm around. Lena appreciated that. Sometimes kindness didn't need explanations. They walked together to one of the practice rooms. The student opened the door for her, and Lena stepped inside. Once she was alone, she felt around for the piano bench and sat down slowly. She placed her hands on the keys. Normally, playing made her feel safe. But today, her thoughts kept drifting toward the city auditorium, imagining the crowd, the lights she couldn't see, the heavy silence before her performance. She pressed a single note, soft, warm dot, then another. Slowly, she began building a melody. But this one sounded different from her usual style shakier, full of small pauses that revealed her thoughts. She didn't try to hide her feelings. Music always told the truth. As she played, she imagined what it would feel like to sit in front of a huge audience. Would they listen? Would they whisper? Would someone laugh the way they did yesterday? The fear brought a sting to her chest, but she kept playing. A few minutes later, the door opened quietly. The director stepped inside, listening from the doorway. He didn't speak until she paused. That's a beautiful melody, he said. She turned her head slightly toward his voice. I don't know what it is. It just came out. Most honest music does, he replied. He walked closer, stopping near the side of the piano. Lena, may I tell you something? She nodded. Double quotes yesterday. When you played after the masterclass, I recorded a small part of it. I didn't plan to, but the moment felt important. And later, I sent the recording to a friend who organizes the charity showcase. Lena froze. You sent it? Without telling me? Yes, he said calmly. I wasn't trying to pressure you. I simply wanted to see if he had room for a performer with your ability. And he does. In fact, he was amazed. She didn't speak. She didn't know if she should feel scared or honored or angry. The director continued. He offered you a solo performance slot. Not because of your blindness. Not because he felt sorry for you. But because he heard something special. Her breath trembled. But I'm not ready. I don't think I can play in front of a big audience. He answered gently. Maybe not today. Maybe not tomorrow. But you will be. How can you be so sure? She whispered. Because I've seen what you can do, he said. And I've seen how you rise after being pushed down. Yesterday, you were hurt. But you still came back today. That alone tells me everything. Lena lowered her head. I'm scared. I know, he said. Courage doesn't mean you're not scared. It means you take a step anyway. She stayed quiet for a long moment, her fingers resting on the cool keys. The director didn't rush her. Finally, Lena asked, What if I make mistakes? Then the audience will hear a human being, he replied. And that's more powerful than perfection. She took a deep breath. I'll try. The director smiled softly. That's all I hope to hear. For the next hour, they worked together not on a specific piece, but on building her confidence. They talked about how she could handle nerves, how to breathe before starting, how to center herself if the crowd felt overwhelming. The director reminded her that she wasn't performing to impress anyone. She was performing to speak through music. And music was something she had always understood. Later in the afternoon, once practice was done, Lena stepped outside the building. The air smelled of warm pavement and distant street food. The breeze brushed her cheeks. She walked slowly, replaying the director's words in her mind. A charity showcase. A huge audience. A solo performance. It felt unreal. She wondered what the famous pianist from yesterday would think if he knew she had been offered such a stage. Would he still laugh? Would he still doubt her? The thought didn't hurt as much as it would have yesterday. For the first time, she didn't care what he thought. As she reached the bus stop, she lifted her face toward the sky. She couldn't see the sunlight, but she felt its warmth. She whispered to herself, "I can do this." And for the first time in a long while, she almost believed it. The days that followed felt like a whirlwind for the girl. Everything seemed to move faster than she could fully process, yet every moment carried a new meaning for her. After her performance on the small stage, people from the hall kept talking about her. Some spoke softly, as if her story needed to be handled with care. Others spoke with excitement, amazed by the way she played, as if she could see the entire world through sound alone. She stayed mostly quiet, not out of fear, but because she was trying to understand what was happening around her. For so long, she had been treated like someone who needed to be guided, someone who should stay away from the spotlight. But now, people were praising her. They were repeating her name. They were treating her not as someone fragile, but as someone gifted. Her guardian watched everything with mixed feelings. Pride, relief, disbelief, everything settled in at once. She knew how much the girl had practiced in silence. She knew how many nights the girl had played softly, so she would not disturb anyone. Now, the world was finally noticing something she had believed in for years. But not everyone celebrated with the same heart. The famous pianist, whose words had sparked the entire moment, kept his distance. He avoided talking about what happened. Those close to him whispered that he had been embarrassed. Some said he was deep in thought, trying to understand how a young blind girl could play with more feeling than he had shown in years. Others thought he simply didn't know how to react. Meanwhile, the hall's manager approached the girl with an invitation. He explained, slowly and respectfully, that an upcoming event would bring together some of the most talented performers in the region. It was not a competition, but a showcase where musicians could present their work. He wanted her to be part of it, not as a special case, not as someone pitied, but as an artist. Her guardian waited for her answer, giving her the choice. Even though the girl couldn't see the expressions of those around her, she could feel the weight in the air. She could feel the hope in her guardian's silence. And after a moment, she nodded. The manager smiled warmly. He made sure she understood that there was no pressure, no expectations she needed to meet except her own. He wanted her to feel valued, not used. The girl thanked him in her gentle voice, and even that small word carried sincerity. From that day on, preparations began. She practiced daily, but not the way someone under pressure would. She played because she loved the piano. She played because every note helped her breathe. She played because sound was her way of painting the world. Her guardian helped her go through the pieces she wanted to perform. They explored new melodies, soft ones that drifted like peaceful wind, and powerful ones that felt like rain beating against the earth. The girl didn't choose based on difficulty. She chose based on emotion. She wanted to tell her story through music. The more she practiced, the more she found new ways to connect with the piano. Her fingers moved with confidence, not hesitation. She still made mistakes, but she didn't fear them. Each mistake taught her something new. She learned to feel the smallest shift in tone, the slightest change in rhythm. Her senses became sharper, more aware. As the showcase day approached, people began talking again. The atmosphere in town shifted. Those who had seen her first performance described it to others. Some exaggerated the moment, adding dramatic details to make the story sound bigger. But most spoke honestly. They talked about the sincerity in her playing, the softness in her voice, the way her fingers moved as though they understood secrets. The famous pianist heard everything. He stayed mostly alone, practicing in long sessions behind closed doors. For the first time in years, he felt uncertain, not because he doubted his skill, but because he could not shake the memory of the girl playing without fear. She had played not for admiration, but for expression. He realized he had lost that feeling somewhere along the way. One afternoon, he stood outside the room where she practiced. He didn't go in. He simply listened. Her melody drifted through the hallway, gentle, steady, pure. It wasn't perfect, but perfection wasn't what held him still. It was emotion. Honest emotion he couldn't remember feeling in his own work. He left quietly, not wanting to disturb her. That night, he sat alone, thinking about the path he had taken. He had built his career on discipline, structure, and the desire to prove himself. Over time, he forgot what drew him to music in the first place. Hearing the girl reminded him of something he once felt, something he had lost. Days passed, and the hall prepared for the upcoming showcase. Workers arranged the seating, checked the lights, tuned the instruments, and ensured every detail was perfect. The manager gave personal attention to the piano the girl would play. He made sure it was polished, tuned with precision, and placed safely so she could reach it easily. Her guardian stayed close, making sure the girl felt comfortable. She guided her gently through the hall, helping her remember the space. The girl walked slowly, using her hands to understand the stage. She touched the edges, the bench, and finally the piano keys. She played a soft note, allowing the sound to settle inside her. Later, the girl practiced again, this time on the stage where she would perform. The hall was empty, except for a few staff members. Her notes echoed beautifully. The sound filled the space gently, rising and falling in waves. One of the workers whispered to another, "She plays like she can see everything." Another replied quietly, "Maybe she sees more than we do." Her guardian smiled at those words. She had always believed that sight was not limited to the eyes. Day before the event, the famous pianist approached the manager. He asked if he could speak to the girl privately, but only if she felt comfortable. The manager relayed the message to her guardian, who then asked the girl. The girl thought about it carefully. She remembered his harsh words from earlier, but she also remembered the silence that followed her performance. She nodded again, not out of fear or obligation, but because she believed that every conversation had meaning. They met in a quiet room. The pianist spoke gently. He apologized, not dramatically, not for show, but sincerely. He explained that he had judged her quickly. He admitted he had forgotten the soul of music, and that hearing her play reminded him of it. The girl listened quietly. She didn't respond immediately, but when she did, her words were calm. She told him she held no anger. She explained that she played not to impress anyone, but because music made her feel alive. She said that when she played, she felt like she could see colors, shapes, and horizons. She said music gave her freedom. The pianist felt humbled. Her words were simple, but they carried weight. He thanked her and left the room quietly, feeling lighter than he had in years. That night, the girl slept peacefully, her mind filled with melodies. She felt ready not because she wanted to prove something, but because she finally understood how much music connected her to the world. Her guardian sat beside her, watching her rest. She whispered a quiet prayer, hoping the world would continue to treat the girl with kindness. The next morning, the sun rose slowly, casting warm light across the town. People began arriving early, eager to see the event. No one knew exactly what would happen, but everyone felt the excitement. And the girl, standing backstage with calm hands and a steady heart, waited for her moment. She didn't know how many people would be watching. She didn't know what the reaction would be. She only knew one thing. She was ready to share her heart through the piano. The hall was already filled with people long before the event was set to begin. Soft murmurs floated through the air as guests took their seats, programs rustling quietly in their hands. Some had come because they loved music. Others came because they had heard the story of a blind girl who played the piano as if she saw the world differently. No one knew exactly what to expect, but everyone felt a sense of anticipation. Backstage, the girl sat calmly on a small bench. Her guardian held her hand gently, whispering quiet reassurances. The girl nodded slowly, her expression relaxed. She had practiced for days, but she didn't feel nervous. Instead, she felt connected to something deeper, something that went beyond the stage, beyond the audience, beyond their expectations. She knew that once she sat before the piano, everything else would fade. Only the notes would remain, only the feeling, only the colors she imagined through sound. The manager approached her with a warm voice, letting her know that her turn would come soon. He spoke softly, making sure she never felt pressured. She smiled in his direction, thanking him politely. Her voice was small but steady. As performers went on stage one by one, the audience applauded each one kindly. There were violinists, vocalists, guitarists, and even a small group that performed together. Their music was beautiful, and the audience appreciated every moment. But even as they listened, people could sense a quiet pull in the atmosphere. They were waiting for the girl. Some whispered to their neighbors about what they had heard. Others sat silently, wondering how someone who couldn't see could play with such feeling. Meanwhile, backstage, the famous pianist stood several steps away from the girl. He watched her quietly, thinking about everything that had happened in the last few days. He wasn't there to compete or outshine anyone. He was there to watch, to learn, and to regain something he had lost. When the announcer finally called her name, the hall grew silent, not the heavy silence of expectation, but the soft silence of respect. Her guardian helped her to her feet and guided her slowly toward the stage. The girl walked with small, careful steps, her hand lightly touching the guardian's arm. The wooden floor beneath her shoes felt familiar from the rehearsals, and she moved steadily forward. When she reached the piano bench, her guardian helped her sit down and gently placed her hands where she needed them. The girl brushed her fingertips over the keys, letting the layout settle into her memory again. She took a quiet breath. The audience watched without a single whisper. Then, the girl began to play. The first notes drifted gently through the hall, soft and delicate like early morning light. Her fingers moved slowly at first, feeling her way into the melody. The sound carried warmth, a peaceful calm that settled across the audience. And then, the music grew. Her hands danced across the keys, not with rushed speed, but with purpose. The melody changed shape, becoming rich and deep. Every note felt like it carried a piece of her heart. Her playing was not perfect in a technical sense. There were tiny hesitations, small pauses, but none of it mattered. Perfection wasn't what the audience heard. They heard honesty. They heard courage. They heard a girl who played not because she wanted applause, but because music was her way of speaking. Some in the audience closed their eyes. Others leaned forward, afraid to miss even a single sound. A mother in the crowd held her child close, tears welling in her eyes. A group of teenagers who came out of curiosity found themselves moved in ways they didn't expect. The famous pianist stood backstage, listening with his eyes lowered. He heard emotion he had forgotten. He heard truth he had overlooked. He felt something shift inside him, something he hadn't felt since he was young. It was humbling. As the girl played, her expression remained calm. She didn't see the audience, but she felt them. She felt the weight of the room, the stillness that replaced the usual restlessness. She felt connected, as though her music reached out like invisible threads. Near the end of the piece, the melody softened again. It felt like a gentle goodbye, a quiet thank you. Her fingers slowed, pressing each key with care. And then, with one final tender note, the performance ended. The silence that followed was deep, almost unreal. For a moment, no one moved. They were still inside the world she had created. And then dash applause. It began softly, then grew stronger, louder, fuller. People rose one by one until the entire hall stood. Their clapping filled the space with warmth. Some cheered. Others wiped their eyes. It wasn't just appreciation. It was admiration from the heart. The girl sat quietly, unsure at first of the reaction. But when she heard the sound rising like a wave, she smiled gently. Her guardian hugged her from behind, whispering that she had touched every person in the room. The manager stepped onto the stage, asking the audience to settle for a moment. He spoke with emotion, explaining that this young girl reminded everyone of the true purpose of art: to feel, to connect, to express. He then asked her if she wanted to share a few words, but only if she was comfortable. She nodded slowly and leaned toward the small microphone. Her voice was soft, almost shy. She thanked everyone for listening. She explained that when she played, she felt like she wasn't alone, that the piano became her way of seeing the world. She said she hoped her music made people feel something, even if only for a moment. Her words touched the audience just as deeply as her music. After she left the stage, people approached her guardian with kind messages. Some offered support. Some wanted to invite her to other performances. Others simply wanted to say that she had changed the way they thought about strength. The famous pianist finally approached her. When he spoke, his voice was gentle and sincere. He told her that her performance reminded him why he began playing music many years ago. He said she helped him remember something important, that music isn't about winning, proving, or comparing. It's about feeling. The girl smiled, thanking him softly. She didn't carry any bitterness. His earlier words no longer held power over her. In that moment, there was only respect. As the evening slowly ended, her guardian guided her toward the exit. The girl walked peacefully, tired but fulfilled. She could hear people still talking about her, still moved by what she had shared. Outside the hall, a gentle breeze brushed against her face. She lifted her head slightly, imagining the sky above her. She didn't need to see it to feel its presence. Her guardian wrapped an arm around her shoulders, whispering how proud she was. The girl leaned into the warm embrace, feeling safe, grateful, and hopeful. On the way home, she held on to the memory of the stage, the piano keys beneath her fingers, the silence that came before the applause. She didn't think of herself as someone who had amazed the world. She thought of herself simply as someone who loved music deeply. And that was enough. In the days that followed, people continued sharing her story. But she didn't let the attention overwhelm her. She practiced daily, not because others expected it, but because the piano was her friend, her guide, her voice. Her journey didn't end with that showcase. It only began. She had shown the world something precious, that true beauty can come from unexpected places, that strength often hides behind gentle spirits, and that even without sight, one can see more clearly than most. And as she sat at the piano each morning afterward, she felt a quiet truth settle inside her. She didn't need eyes to see. She had music, and through it, she could light the world in her own way.